Hi, everybody, and welcome to another installment of Montgomery County Community College SRT Masterclass series. Yay! So today we have a very good friend of mine, Rodney Whittenberg here, who is going to give us a whole little synopsis of his journey through this music and film business, as well as hopefully helping you find opportunities that are available to you. Everybody, please welcome Rodney.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for having me. I don't think so. Yeah, I think I'm good, right? You guys can hear me?
Yep.
Yeah? Okay. So I'm going to tell you a whole bunch of stories, and hopefully they're entertaining as well as informative. I'm also going to give you a lot of my personal opinions. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's fact, but it's what I've discovered along my journey. Hopefully there are some lessons and some information and maybe even some inspiration that you can draw from some of the things I'm going to talk about. I'm going to start with a little setup about my past and how I fell in love with being a creative being. And then hopefully or quickly I'll get to some stories about how opportunity is everywhere. So let's go on this journey. So, I was born in 1963, and as you can see, I was a pretty happy baby. My mom used to tell me that I would crawl into the kitchen and pull out all the pots and pans and sit in the center of the floor and bang on them and make up songs and stories and just kind of be kind of goofy. And I come by that very honestly because that guy, my dad, would do the same thing. Now, my dad was born in 1927. He grew up really, really poor. By the time I came along, he was the first African-American salesperson at Sears in Philadelphia, selling air conditioners and refrigerators. Now, that might not sound like a big deal right now because you can get air conditioners anywhere or refrigerators, but in the late 50s, early 60s, they were new. And I always struggled to try to figure out how to explain what they were the equivalent of, but they were groundbreaking, and everybody wanted one, and they were expensive, and my dad was able to make a good living doing this. And what he did with the money that he made was he would buy rundown houses. So a good chunk of my childhood, in that photo right there, when I was 5, my dad would say to me, "Hey, Rod, we're gonna go build a house." And I would be like, "Yeah, I'm gonna play with my dad." But really, we were rehabbing a house. And I would get there, and there would be this house that would have holes in the ceiling and mice, and bugs, and all that sort of stuff. And he'd go, "All right, let's get to playing." And he showed me how to run 220 and 110 line and put drop ceilings in. And we did all this stuff together. And at the end of that, what might have taken a year to do because he would do it on his days off, I had a revelation even at 5, and that was, if I imagined something, if I imagined it in my head and worked really, really hard, it could become real, because that house that was a mess was now a home that he rented out. And he continued to do this for about 10 or 15 years. He would just buy houses and we'd rehab them. But it was this big lesson for me that I saw that, wow, I can imagine something and I can make it happen. And this was just the beginning of the little gifts that my dad gave me as a little kid. He was also very curious and was always asking questions, and that introduced us to things that I was exposed to just from a very early age and got me being curious. And it also inspired my creativity. I mean, I would start always just was very, very curious about how things worked and how they were put together. Now, my dad also loved music and film. As a family, we would go to the movies sometimes 3 or 4 times a month. And this is during the 60s and 70s, early 70s. And he was always going around the house singing and making up songs. And one of the moments that drastically changed my life was when I was about 8 years old. My dad made up a country song, but he didn't know how to play music. He didn't play an instrument, so we found someone in the phone book who was a composer and arranger, and we went to this person's house, and my dad sang the song that he made up into the microphone. And the guy said, hey, you want to hear your voice? You want to record something? And I was like, yeah. And so I did, and I was hooked. That was the moment I remember being hooked, like, oh, this is cool. I want to do something like this. I don't know what this is, but I'm in a house where there's musical instruments everywhere, and this guy's got this machine that can record my voice and play it back, and I think this is the coolest thing in the world. In fact, so much so that when I got home, I found my dad's cassette deck under the bed, his cassette recorder, and I went around recording everything. I was recording my little baby sister in her crib, and I'm running outside, chasing around my dog, and I'm just recording everything. So that was the beginning of me being hooked, and it was also the beginning of me just starting to make up songs. I didn't play an instrument, but I would just walk around starting to write stuff down and going, oh, that could be a song, right? One of the songs that I remember, if you'll indulge me, from when I was 8 years old, and I'm only going to play a little bit of it, but it went something like this. Putty, putty, you need it, yes you do. You need it, and it's true, to fill a hole in the wall. Putty, putty. So my dad had asked me to go down in the basement. My dad said, go down in the basement and get some putty. And I didn't want to go. I was scared. So I started singing, and that's what came out. I tried to make it into something. I thought, oh, who wants a song about putty? Nobody wants a song about putty. But I tried to turn it into something. No, I didn't know what I was doing. I was 8 years old. So not that long after that, once we moved to Yeadon, my dad saw that I had this immense interest in ripping anything electrical or electronic apart. If there was a radio, old TV lying around, I would down in the basement, and there I was with pliers and screwdrivers digging around in it, trying to figure out what all that stuff was. So one day he came home from Sears, and he goes, I got something for you. Sears had a correspondence course, and it was that you could take if you were an employee. They were free, and it was in basic electricity. Now, I'm 9. He hands me this stack of books and says, here. And I go, okay. And no one said at 9, you're not supposed to study electronics or electricity. This is not. You got to wait till you're older. He just handed me the books. So that summer, I read like crazy, and I read the book. And I was so into it. I remember, now there was pre-internet, so when I came to something like capacitor, I had to get on my bike, right over to the library. What's a capacitor? Library's looking at me like, you're crazy. I don't know what you're talking about. Let me see. This thing here says that's a capacitor. Oh, what's a capacitor? And the librarian was great. She goes, physics, go look it up. Why can't you just tell me? I'm a little kid. But I spent that whole summer going through that whole thing. When I didn't get something in the book, I'd go to the library, just spend time in the physics department, and then eventually got through the end of that whole course, took the test. My dad sent it in, came back on my birthday in October, and I had gotten an A in basic electricity. And so he says, what do you want to do next? I go, basic electronics. What do you want to do after that? Home organ repair. Why? Because you won't buy me an organ, and I want one. Okay, home organ repair. So by the time I started my first band, now, mind you, it was very primitive, but one of the keyboards I played at my first band, I made from scratch. I built it out of, and I say that this is, again, beginning of this thing of like, well, I want something, how can I get it? I can't afford to go to the store. Okay, great, 1972, a synthesizer, was more than a couple of $1,000s. How was I going to buy like an ARP Odyssey or who knows? I'm trying to think of what would have been, or a Moog. They would just been out of range, and my dad wasn't going to buy me one. That would have been insane for a 10, 9, 11, 12-year-old kid. So this is the beginning of me realizing, oh, if I want something, maybe there's a way I can get it that's outside of just going and buying it. And so that was the beginning of me starting to play in bands, my interest in electronics. By 15, I started playing guitar. And every day after school, I had befriended a guy by the name of Mark, who played drums, and every day after school we were down in this basement just jamming and making up stuff and playing. And we had that group. Then we grew into a group of there were 3 of us, and then there were 5 of us, and then all the time down in the basement just jamming. And I started making up songs, and I would bring them into the band, and we try and figure them out, and and eventually had a really weird change. I'm a rocker, so I started playing rock. We were playing Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd and the Cars and all that sort of stuff. And somewhere in the middle of that, 76, my dad took the whole family to see Laserium, and I discovered electronic music, and that was a whole thing. And it all was just, I was just being fed. Like there was all this music around. So now I'm going to jump ahead to the first story of opportunity. So by the time I'm 17, I'm out of high school. I decided to take a year off and work. So because I had gone to, while I was in high school, I went to Temple University. Again, another opportunity. I wanted to study music, and I didn't like the music program at my high school. And so I went to my parents and said, hey, can I go to college for music? And they're like, well, you're only in the 8th or 9th grade. And I said, well, they have courses at Temple on Saturday. Can I take those? And they're like, you want more school? I'm like, yes. So start taking these Saturday courses in music theory. And I went with one of my good friends, and it was great. I mean, we were just learning all sorts of stuff, and my brain was just sucking it up. But I also went to Votech for electronics. So I graduated high school, and I took a job at SEPTA, which did not last very long, as a technician. And when I left there, I decided I was going to try this thing at being a musician. And I didn't know what I was doing, so I started a band, and I started another band that happened at the same time. One band was a punk band, another band was an electronic band. Then I went and said, I'll join someone's band. I'll play bass, I'll play guitar, I'll play keyboards, I don't care. And I just did whatever opportunity showed up. Someone said, hey, you want to do a show? Sure. So now here's the fun part. So one day I'm in this clothing store called The Balcony. And The Balcony was at 69th and Market Street. And it was kind of a head shop, record store, they sold like all sorts of paraphernalia, if you will. And I overheard the 2 guys who owned the store talking. And they were talking about a commercial they were going to do that was going to air on this new thing called MTV. And I'm like I said, 17 years old, 18 years old. And I overhear this, and I don't know where it came from in me, but I go, do you have a jingle for your commercial? And they're like, what are you talking about? Like, do you have a jingle for your commercial? And they're like, get away, kid, come on. They knew me as the guy who came in and bought weird records, like come in or like, no. Well, you're doing a commercial. Do you need a jingle? I'd never written a jingle before in my entire life. I didn't know. I knew they were 30 seconds long. That's what I knew. And I go, what do you want in this jingle? What would you like it to say? Like, dude, kid, we're not asking you to write a jingle. No, come on. I was very persistent but respectful. And finally, I grabbed a piece of paper. I said, what do you want to say? And they said, okay, we want the name of the store. We want, what we sell, our location. I'm like, okay, cool. And I wrote all that down on a little scrap piece of paper. It was on the counter. And I stopped what I was doing. I went home, got on the bus, went home. And I went up to my bedroom. I had a little 4-track recorder. I had a little drum machine, a couple of guitars, and I sat there for 2 days and wrote 12 30-second songs of every style I could think of about The Balcony, this clothing store at 69th Street. I even called a friend of mine up who was a singer and said, come over and sing on this for me. She goes, what are you doing? I go, I'm making a jingle. You're what? Like, I don't know. Just come over and sing, because I had written one that kind of sounded like Pat Benatar, and that wouldn't work with me singing it. So a couple days later, I go back down to the store. I got this cassette in my hand. I go into the owners are there, and they're like, oh, it's you. I go, I got your jingle. And they're like, oh, all right. Here. And so they put it in the cassette player. They hit play, and they're like, wait a second. This is pretty good. wait. And they rewind it and listen to it again. Yeah, this is what we need. What? Okay, kid. How much? What do you need to? How much do you want for this, kid? I think of the biggest number I can think of, $2,000. They're like, okay, what else do you need? Oh, that was easy. I need to go into a real recording studio and record it. They're like, okay. 3 days later, I'm in this recording studio, playing all the parts, laying it down, producing, which I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm following along this vision that I had for this little track. And so I deliver it to them, and they had a company that they had hired to do all the filming and everything. And so that little jingle that
Alright, if you want style and finesse, then shop the place that is the best. Where fashion is in time with the beat. The balcony, 69th and Market Street. We got tops and jeans and shirts and slacks, and the groove on the record racks. We got pictures and posters of your favorite stars, from Michael Jackson to the Cars. So if you wanna join the hip hop crew, this is what I want you to do. Break on down to the store with the beat. The balcony, 69th and Market Street.
So there you go. So that was when I was 17, 18. It gave me enough money because one of the things that happened literally a week after I got paid for doing this jingle was my dad asked me to leave the house. He always said he didn't ask me to leave, but he gave me a little bit of an ultimatum: either the music goes or you go, because I had been never home. I was always out doing gigs or playing or practicing or rehearsing, and I had gotten into college. I was also busting my butt because I didn't learn to read or play music in a traditional sense. I had learned by ear and listening to recordings. So I was going to go to UArts, and I had been busting my butt to just do everything I could possibly do in music, and I was never home. And I came home from a gig like 3 o'clock in the morning, and he just kind of like, where have you been? Either that music goes or you go. And so selling that jingle gave me enough money to move out, and I moved in with one of my best friends, and we found, again, finding opportunity. I said, I got to get out of my house. And I just told everyone I knew. And he said, oh, well, there's this really cheap apartment down in South Philly. Perfect. And so me and my friend moved in. I think our rent was $150 a month. And we had it was a 2-bedroom, dining room, living room. And, but we had a pinball machine. Each of us had little studios in our bedroom for that time period. And I started UArts that fall. And so, and it also, selling that jingle gave me the confidence to say, oh, I can make money doing this. And it also showed me that, wow, there is opportunity out there if you just keep your eyes open, if you keep your ears open, and you constantly are developing skills, and you're willing to take a risk. There's opportunity everywhere. And this just keeps coming up as a theme in my life that, oh, okay, look, here's this thing in front of me. Should I say yes, or should I open my mouth, or should I not? And time and time again, I open my mouth and say something, and things happen. That's just, things happen. So again, so I'm in school, and one of the things that I think is really important is to not only be open, but think about the things that you are really curious about. So one of the things I really wanted to learn was to write really great lyrics. How do people do that? How does Dylan do that? Well, how did Paul Simon do that? Well, they read a lot. There was no formal place for them to go. But there I am at UArts, and my first day of class, I walk into English, and there's this woman who's teaching English named Camille Paglia. If you look her up, she's kind of a rebel. But she starts teaching the English class, and the first thing out of her mouth is she starts talking about the poem or the lyrics to The End by The Doors. And I'm like, now this is an English class I can get into. And somehow we became, I mean, it was my first year there, her first year, we became friendly. And I always am looking for mentors. Always looking for mentors. If there's something I want to learn, I'm looking for someone who's an expert in that thing that I want to know how to do. And here's this woman who's an English professor who is rattling off all these things about rock music like no English teacher I've ever had before. I mean, she's going into Hendrix. She says, I want to write like Hendrix plays guitar. I'm like, you are awesome. So I asked her if she would mentor me as being a songwriter, and she said yes. And she started teaching on the side for no money. She just started showing me things about she gave me a list of books to read. She started showing me what she goes, first of all, stop listening to that stuff you're listening to. I go, okay, I want you to get a steady diet of Chuck Berry and Bob Dylan. All right. And I want you to start writing down those lyrics and analyzing them and looking at them and seeing what they're doing. Okay. And so, again, there was something I wanted. There was this opportunity in front of me, and I took it. And good thing I did, because while I'm in that first year, I meet someone. I end up playing in this little cover band to make money. Through playing in that cover band, I meet the person who was the big push or financial and manager of the rock band Cinderella, and he sees me playing and says, I want to work with you. And so I end up getting a manager and an investor, and he goes, let's start a project around you. I'm like, wow, that was fast. Meaning I just got into college, and I was like, okay, I have a choice. So I decided to leave school and go pursue this thing, but I kept in touch with Camille, and she was my mentor. I would send her lyrics, and she would send red marks all over the place and send them back to me. But again, here we go again. Opportunity is everywhere. I knew that I wanted to play original music, and I knew that I needed help to be able to do that. And I also, so I had like 4 or 5 original bands that I was doing at the same time. Once this thing happened with this management deal, I decided to stop that and just focus on creating this band. And I spent 4 years writing and putting this band together. Now, opportunities everywhere. Before we even did a real gig, I would do test gigs. We'd go out and play a little or we'd invite people over to watch. And I go, how's this? And they'd go, oh, it's good. I go, I don't know. You're my friend. I can't trust this. All right. So we'd go play someplace far away where nobody knew us. Play. How's it going? Not working. Come back. Retool. Think about it some more. Work on it some more. Go play again. Better, but still, we're not wowing them. One of the things that I think is really critical, while opportunity is everywhere, it is up to all of you as individuals to find where your bar of excellence is. Where is your personal bar of excellence? What is where you see greatness, and how do you get there? And it doesn't matter how long it takes or what you have to do to get there, but your goal is to get to your own personal level of greatness and what is satisfying to you. If it's about making money, then you need to figure that out. If it's about creating something that's beautiful, then how do you do that? If it's about doing it on your own terms, whatever it is, but you have to find out where those things are for you so that you can have a sense of what it is that is success for you. Because success is not the same for everyone. For me, success was being able to live a creative life on my own terms, being able to have enough money to have the gear and equipment and a studio to work out of and all those things. But I also recognize that to make all that stuff happen, no one was going to give me my bar. No one was going to say, oh, that's great, or that's terrible, or, I mean, they will, or they'll just ignore me, or they won't hire me or whatever, or but I had to have that governor in me to go, that's not good enough. Now, I also have a challenge. I'm a little dyslexic, and I'm a terrible speller. But I keep pushing myself and keep trying and keep going keep on working at that, trying to get to what I think is excellent or great. I will say so many times I hear people, I mean, it's amazing to me. I'm jumping ahead, but it's a person who works as a consultant and a studio owner, and I work with bands and artists. How many times people come to me and play me something? I go, is that what you think is great? I mean, you're asking me to tell you it's great, but do you think that's great? And they'll say, yeah. I'm like, but you're not in tune. That's really weird. I don't know. Like, where's your personal bar as to where greatness is? And if you look at any of the people that are superstars, or not even superstars, people that you consider great, you can sense that they have a personal thing that they hold on to that, okay, this is what's great. There's a really cool interview with Jimmy Iovine, and he talks about having worked with all these different people from Springsteen to Lennon to, all the way up to having the label. I think it's in his documentary. And he says, these are people who are willing to do whatever it takes to get to greatness. For Bruce, it may take a year. For Lennon, he was quick. He would do it in 2 weeks. But it's not about the time. It's about getting to that, achieving that vision. So anyway, so I had this vision of this band that was, I wanted to mix rock and funk. My big influences, Led Zeppelin. I'm a huge Prince fan. David Bowie. How could I, and of course, Dylan's crazy lyrics. How could I get all of this into one thing? And that was my goal, to try and get there. And then, and I kept writing songs, and I'm writing. And I came up with this band, and eventually we came out. And I think, so we never got signed. We got very close, but we sold a lot of independent recordings. And we got to the point where we could demand a guarantee at every gig. And so we were making money, but and there were so many opportunities. One of the things happened was we got an Anheuser-Busch sponsorship, which allowed us to start playing festivals. And there was some talk about whether we should take it or not, because do we want to be sponsored by Bud Light, given that, the kind of band that we were. But we decided to go for it, and it was a good thing. We got to play places that we never would have played before, and we got financial support from Anheuser-Busch. So I'm going to play you a little bit of that band so you can see what I'm talking about and how we were able to combine these musical elements. Now, keep in mind, this is 91, I guess. Dark Blonde.
So please welcome Dark Blonde.
I'm Crackhead Jones. I break her and kill her and bury her bones. I found your baby lying in the trash can. Pro-life, pro-choice, I am the American. I'm the American. Shine and see. I'm a TV creature, TV talk show host. KKK, Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. I'm a New York rebel in tight blue jeans. Peter marks on my arms and eyes like TNT. I'm homeless on the sidewalk next door to the president. I'm a minimum wage mother of three, paying the White House rent. I am American. I am American. Got your disgrace on the band.
That's enough of that. So, thanks. So, political lyrics, socially conscious lyrics, funky groove, great band, but just, I don't know, maybe we were too early, maybe we were too late. We a lot of accolades, we won awards, but couldn't get all the way to getting a record deal. And maybe that was also partially because of me, because I think by the time we got close, I don't think I wanted to be famous anymore. Like, I loved playing music, I loved being creative, but it just, the idea of losing that part of life where you can just kind of live a normal life was like being able to wake up in your own bed and in your house and go to the supermarket. Those things were kind of important to me. And that leads me to another thing about this opportunity being everywhere. It's really important that you figure out who you are. What's important to you and who are you? I found out through the band experience that I hate traveling. I cannot stand travel, even to this day. Now, I've been all over the world. I've been really cool places. I hate getting there. I love being somewhere else. And the idea of being on a bus and going to a town and being there for 5 hours and then getting back on a bus or a van or a plane or whatever it is, a car, and going somewhere else for 5, it's like maddening to me. I would lose my mind. Some people love that. They thrive on it. I couldn't, the thought of it makes me shake. I like waking up in the morning and have my cup of tea. What creative thing can I do today? All right, today we're going to write a song. Okay. And I walk down to the studio and I write a song. That makes me happy. That's me. You got to find the thing that makes you happy. And the only way to really do that is to risk and try things. Whatever opportunity comes in front of you, you try. I didn't know that I would hate to. I mean, from the time I was a little kid till the time I was in my late 20s, all I wanted to do was be on stage and tour. The idea of being in a rock band was like all I could think of. And then I got it. And I was like, I don't like this. And I thought, okay, maybe I'll like it better if I was a singer-songwriter. So I ended my band and I did a little stint as just me with my acoustic guitar. Didn't like that either. I said, what am I going to do next? Well, production. Well, again, opportunity being everywhere. So I ended up meeting this guy who is a composer, and I had been thinking about going back to school to study composition, finishing my degree in studying. And I walked into his studio, and there he was writing music for a little film. And he says to me, you want to do this? I'm like, yeah. He goes, well, I'll give you a shot here. And so he gives me this tape with some time code on it. I go back to my apartment and I'm fiddling around with it. Well, it took me 3 weeks to try and write 1.5 minutes of music. And I gave it back to him, and his response to me was, well, I'll give you an E for effort. I'm like, thanks. He goes, yeah, this is not good. I'm like, okay. And I didn't get angry. I didn't freak out. I said, what do you think I should do? He goes, I don't know. Copy some stuff off film off the TV and turn down the sound and try scoring it. What else? He goes, practice scoring. I don't know. I go, well, I was thinking of going back to school for a composition. He goes, okay. I go, all right, well, thank you for the opportunity. And I worked my butt off for a good 8 years. I went back to school. I found mentors in composition. I started writing music for Temple University's dance department, and again, opportunity. I wanted to write. I didn't care how much people were going to pay me. I knew the dance community in Philly because one of my other passions is dance. So I went to Temple. I said, do you want someone to write music for all your students? And they said, that would be great. I'm like, okay. And I started writing. I remember the first piece I wrote for a choreographer. We did it over the phone. She was in her apartment doing moves, and I was in my studio, and I'm composing this little electronic piece of music for her. And when it was done, I had the CD, and I drove up. It was like a clandestine drop-off. I handed her the CD. She gives me $50, and I was so happy. But that led to me being kind of the, I guess, official Temple University composer. And I just wrote music for anybody's dance performance that I could. Why? Because I was practicing, because I wanted to write music for film. So And I let everybody in the world know that I really want to write music for film and television. I have this dream. And during that time, I was running a nonprofit that did anti-violence, anti-drug work with kids. And even there, I'd make something with the kids. We'd make a little video with the kids, and I go, I'm going to write the music for that. And so constantly just looking to practice this thing of writing music for a picture. And finally, someone said, hey, Rodney, this person just lost the music to their movie. You want to write some music for it? I'm like, yeah. So I got my first film, this little teeny film about an outsider artist. That film, the director of that film was friends with this woman who was head of production at ABC Television. She plays the film for her. The woman goes, this is pretty good. I'm going to tell my head composer about this. She tells her head composer, it's 8 years later, it was the guy who told me I was awful. He's now head composer at ABC doing A&E's biographies. He calls me up. He says, Rod, I'm like, yeah. He goes, I'm hearing good things. I'm like, oh, okay. What did you hear? He goes, no, I saw this thing you did and it's good. Send me your reel. So I send him my demo reel. He goes, this is really good. I'm very impressed. I'm going out of town. I'm going to Sundance for a workshop. You want to come up and sub for me? What? He goes, you want to come up and sub for me? We need someone here at, you can stay at my apartment. Come on up and work on A&E's biographies for the week that I'm gone. Okay. I go do this. It's my first TV credit. One of the things that's really key, I didn't burn that relationship. When he told me that I was awful, I didn't freak out. Go, well, you don't know anything. I said, okay, what do I need to do to get better? What do I need to do to be able to reach this dream? So that was my first credit. That was in the late 90s. And to this date, I've scored over 50, 60 TV shows and films. And I can give you a little example here of everything from Tony Bourdain's TV show, the guy who passed away a little while ago, who did a Cook's tour, and I worked with him. I worked with Jane Pauley's show. I've done so many things. My latest film is called Codename I Alone, which just premiered on PBS back in October. But here's a little sample of a little bit of film score, and it was early on. This was
David, wait for me.
So that's the violin. So, thanks. So last story about opportunity being everywhere. So as I'm starting to work on these films, I'm feeling like, well, I've always wanted to direct, and I can't do any worse than the films that I'm looking at. So I bought a camera and I did the same thing I did with the balcony. I talked to some, well, actually before all of that, when I was working with the nonprofit, we had made a bunch of movies with kids and animation. And I had this whole collection of videos. Now, I didn't direct any of these. I ran this nonprofit called the Banner Project, and we made animation and songs and murals and all this sort of stuff with kids in the inner city in Philly. So I had this big collection of stuff. So one day I'm watching TV as I was cleaning up my studio, and this thing comes on HBO. It's a little ad. It says, HBO has just launched a new show called 30 by 30 Kid Flicks, where we're looking for original content by kids. And here's Dolores Morris, Vice President of HBO. And she says, yeah, we're open and we're looking for content that could be family-oriented, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, I have a bunch of that stuff. So what did I do? This is, again, opportunity is everywhere and it's worth the risk. I literally go in the other room, pick up the phone, get the phone number for HBO, and call and ask to speak to Dolores Morris. I get her assistant. We have a 10-minute conversation. A week later, I'm sitting in New York at HBO, and 2 weeks later, they've hired me as an independent producer to go around and make little films with kids. And I'm like, I said I wanted to direct. I didn't know it was going to happen like this. And because of that, that's even crazier, I got sent to the Jamaican Film Festival to make a presentation in front of the whole festival, which was just insane. And that's a whole other story. But again, opportunity is out there. If you see something, the worst thing that can happen is you get a no. But if you get a yes, your whole life can change. And just that quickly. If you just go, hey, do you need, hey, can I help? Hey, I got this idea that might help you. I could keep going, but I want to open it up to questions, and I know that we're only doing an hour, so I'd love to. I mean, I got so many stories I could tell, more of these stories, but yes.
What year is that balcony commercial, and did you see it on MTV?
I did. Oh, God. So it's 83, 84, I think, is when it was on MTV, and the first night it aired, I got all my friends together at my friend's, well, one friend who had cable. We all got together to watch it when it came on. And everybody was like, yeah, you go, Rod. This is great. By the end of the night, they're like, ugh, it's on again. It was on every 15 minutes for months. Because MTV didn't have a lot of programming and they didn't have a lot of commercials. So it was just on all the time. The thing went on to, won a bunch of cable awards, which of course I didn't get any recognition for because I was the kid who wrote the music. But the company who made the commercial got a bunch of, I guess they were Addies or cable awards or something. And yeah, so.
So that was the first commercial you showed us, right?
Yeah.
When you talked about it?
Yeah.
So I want to ask two things.
Uh-huh.
Hip hop at that point was just at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
So you were getting where did you come up with, like, I want to know your compositional thing. How did you write it? What was the, well, I'm going to use this drum machine, I'm going to use it, like,
so
what did you use to actually create it? Because that was there in the early days of what they're using in terms of, Ableton and all the technology that they had. I was alive in 1983 and I was using that technology as well. So that was the stuff, and it's interesting, but it was advanced for the time.
Yeah.
So how did you, like, I'm going to do this rap hip hop thing? What was your process?
Well, first of all, I was such a fan of indie music in general, and luckily in Philly there was a scene. There was this club called the East Side Club. It was a punk alternative club, and radio, college radio in particular, XPN was awesome then. I don't want to. I'm on film. I shouldn't say that. but then each DJ had their own show. So this guy would come on and it would be all atmospheric electronic music. That would be like the Plastic Man would do. He would just play all the spacey stuff. The next show would be a straight up deep reggae show. The next show would be like all underground hip hop. The next show would be only punk from England. The next show would be only punk from New York. I mean, it was just this and I was just like sitting at home, and I was very lucky I had this group of friends that we were all into this kind of eclectic world of like, yeah, there was the stuff that you could hear on MMR and YSP, and there was the stuff that MTV would play, but there was also this stuff that was underground. I mean, one weird summer night, me and my friends decided, let's go downtown and see if we can find some punk rock. So we got on the train, went into Center City, and we just walked around until we saw someone who looked weird and said, where can we find some punk rock? They go, Omnis. So we go down to Omnis, this club. I was like 16. Go to the door. Doorman lets us in. The Misfits are on stage playing to nobody except me and my two friends, because there was nobody in the bar. So I heard all this music that was happening on the underground, hip hop, and it was the birth of that stuff. So then when I thought about making this commercial, I thought, I'm just going to do everything I can think of. I'm going to throw everything at them. I'm going to do a hip hop one. I'll do a rockabilly one. I'll do a punk one. I'm going to do something that sounds like Frank Zappa. I'm going to do something that sounds like Pat Benatar. I'm going to do so I did like 10 or 12 little 30-second pieces. This just happens to be the one that they liked. And in my in my bedroom, I had a reel-to-reel tape player. I had a little Fostex 4-track. I had a Dr. Rhythm Graphic, which was a a Boss drum machine. I had an old Farfisa organ. And you guys don't know Farfisa, but it's a 60s organ. I love those things, but it would never stay in tune. It sat in my bedroom. It's constantly in the shop because it would just constantly go out of tune. What else did I had? I had a St. Louis string synthesizer that I got at a pawn shop that I think for like $60 that just played really bad string sounds. A Casio MT32, the little, and a Yamaha CHS01, which I just literally last night I looked it up to see if I could buy one because I was like, I'd love to have one of those things again. They were the coolest thing. It's like $1,500. I don't think I paid $150 for it when it was new. It's this little keyboard that Yamaha made in the early. It's not even programmable. It doesn't have MIDI. It doesn't have anything, but it's got great sounds for doing like early electronic or hip hop stuff. So I think with that thing, the first thing I think I started with was the lyrics. I wrote out what, if you want style and finesse, then shop the place that is the best. I was kind of imitating Curtis Blow, I guess, because I did the rah, if you want style, because I was just imitating what I heard, like in the clubs. And there was no syncing them together, so I probably laid the drum machine down on tape. Then I laid the keyboard part down on tape. Then I laid the other keyboard part layered on that on tape, and then I would bounce it. And again, I had a lot of experience doing that because when I was younger, before 4-track, I had bought like 2 old reel-to-reel suitcases with the little cathode ray tube that I found at a junk store, and I got them working. And I would sit in my parents' basement, and I would just, I would use pillows as drums, and I'd stick the mic in the pillow, and I'd hit it with sticks, and that would be my drum. And I would record that on one reel-to-reel, and then I'd play that back, and I'd play the little keyboard part, and I'd play it, and I mixed the two together. And so I had a lot of experience just doing multi-track stuff that way, and so that's how I did back then.
From that.
Yeah.
And then you did the violin.
Yes.
So a completely different genre.
Uh-huh.
What was your process to create that thing?
Oh, again, opportunity everywhere, but before opportunity, preparation. And I said, be open to things. So I love all different types of music. And when I went back, even back then, before I even knew how to read music and compose, I was listening. I had a whole reel-to-reel collection of orchestral music that I just loved. I loved electronic music. I remember trying to learn how to play the 1812 Overture on the guitar. I would just sit and listen to it over and over again and try and learn all the parts. And they go, oh, what's the violin doing? Okay. I didn't know what I was doing. I couldn't tell you like what notes they were or anything, but I could play it. Mm-hmm. And so I was just developing my ear. And then when I got to college, there was a composition teacher at again, another mentor, Joe Castaldo, who was old school classical composer, orchestral, and I asked him to mentor me in and then throughout the years, I have always had sort of orchestral, classically oriented or mentors, and I like that genre. I would always write in it. I just make stuff up. Like one day I'd wake up and just go, oh, I think I'll write a string quartet today, and I'd try and write a string quartet, and I mean, even when I went back to school, one of the interesting things was my composition teacher was really into Mahler and contemporary orchestral music, so kept trying to get me to write more, like 12-tone or kind of more like Philip Glass, like out stuff. And I would go, I hear that stuff in my head. I don't know how to write a Bach chorale. Can you teach me that? He goes, eh. So I found a mentor, and one of the best teachers I ever had for composition, Mr. Taranta. He was at Settlement Music School, and he taught me how to write a Bach chorale, like how to write counterpoint and, to follow all the traditional rules of that time period of how to do that. So then when I got the gig to do the violin, when the director came to me with the idea, I had originally thought of making it a swing thing, because I said I like to be contrary. So in Europe at that time, young kids were really into swing music, and there was a whole movement in Germany and in Austria, and of anybody who was rebelling against Hitler, they were listening to American swing. I said, wouldn't it be cool if it was? And she goes, you know how many people will understand what you're doing? I go, how many? 3, 5? Nobody's going to get that. I'm like, oh, all right, fine. So then I just kind of did like sort of a traditional Eastern European kind of vibe. I'm a big Avo Part fan. He's one of my favorite composers too. So whenever I get ready to work on a project like a movie score, I will